Hello and welcome back. I wanted to take a short departure from the Delving Deeper solo game to take a look at some of the methods that I use for generating plots. Now, I use a bunch of different tables, which mostly are printed off and in my DM binder. And each of the methods is slightly different and tends to result in ever so slightly different formats of adventure. Now, the general idea with a lot of these is to come up with a basic idea which then you embellish with your own imagination or from ideas that are put forward by the players themselves. The first of these is probably one of the most renowned collections of tables, which is the Tome of Adventure Design here, which I believe has just had a new version released. And we're going to have a look at the missions section here. And the first table that we can look at, well, I suppose the first thing to say here is that there are different ways, even within this book, of generating missions. The first section deals with generating a location for players to explore, and that, I think, is the general OSR way of doing things. That you've got a location, the players go there, and the story develops from the encounters and the rooms and things that are at that location, which means for less railroading, and the story emerges through player actions. Now, that's a very old school way of doing things. The very first modules were location based, and event based modules, of course, started in the 80s with things like Dragonlance and Ravenloft, and they have the potential for being more restrictive in that if the players don't follow that plot, potentially the preparation that you've done is ruined. But in this regard, randomly generating the things, we hope to come up with something a little bit bare bones that can be developed through player action, and that is enough to make some coherent sense and provide an interesting plot hook. But if it doesn't get acted upon, or if it gets abandoned or ruined in some way, it's not a big thing that we can come up with a different plot. But hopefully the ideas generated will trigger a greater arc. So we're going to start off, as you can see, with the table here. There's 4 different types of mission that we can look at here. A mission coming from a specific individual, so that's a plot hook generated by an NPC. An item that maybe the players want to get for some reason or another. A specific location to go to, which again is similar to the location generation from previously, or a specific event, and that's certainly much more story based. So we're just going to roll randomly here. Maybe we'll generate a couple of things here just to get an impression of what kind of thing that you can get. So I've rolled a 76, which gives us an event. So we're going to go then to the event table, wherever that might be. I think is probably this event-based missions. Here we go. So first we'll generate an event, which is a 32, which gives us infiltrate a group involved in, and then 31, a coup d'etat or rebellion. So there we go. There's our first possible plot, and that's very simple. And can be embellished much greater afterwards. We want to come up with some various complications and think about who the different factions are in that. And I think some of that information can be found within this book, but for example, the villain can be generated, but we'll just leave it at that for now. Let's generate another quick mission. 61 gives us a location. Again, just here we'll generate 35, which gives us explore, and we want to know what to. We want to know what to explore here. So we get 34. Flying structure. It seems very strange that I'm rolling almost identically each time, but that's just how the dice come up. So there we go. A flying structure has appeared somewhere that needs to be explored. The reason why, well, that can be determined with probably the motivations table that we took a look at previously. In fact, we do have the hooks and motivations here. So, I mean, we could roll on this for each of them. So, 24 enhanced ability to cast spells. So maybe we can say that exploring the flying structure can give that. So, explore a flying structure to gain enhanced ability to cast spells, and then how the characters learn about this. We've rolled a 2, so a person offers to trade information about the opportunity in exchange for money. So there we go. We've established a very basic plot there. So how does that actually intersect with our let me try and find the screen that we're on. There we go. You can have a look at that. So yeah, the first one we generated there, infiltrating a group involved in the coup d'etat or rebellion. That's interesting. That sounds like a larger plot. We need to come up with the groups, who's being rebelled against, who are the rebellers, and all that sort of thing. That sounds a little bit too vast in scope for now. Exploring the flying structure to gain an enhanced ability to cast spells. That sounds a little easier to deal with at the moment. So we would have to work out what and where is this flying structure. How did it appear? How long has it been there? Do the players know about it before they speak with somebody who's offering to trade information for it? So I mean, I think in this situation, if they want information about it before they go and explore, then maybe it has appeared and it's been seen somewhere, and so the whole trigger for this adventure would be that people are talking about it in the tavern. This flying structure has appeared, and someone says they know something about it, but they're not going to give any information until they've been paid, and before they even give some information on how to get to the structure, maybe someone else has said, oh, well, someone went there before and now they're able to cast spells, and that can trigger the players to want to explore. So that's essentially how the tables can be used to come up with a plot hook, but it doesn't really give you too much information about what's going to happen on the adventure itself. So another thing that I like to use, though I haven't used it very often, is this idea of using a dramatic situation from literature or theatre, and I should have prepared this beforehand, but I can't remember exactly where the idea of the 36 dramatic situations come from. But basically, this table that I've created has got 2d6 rolls, and we get a 1 and a 4. So we've got a dramatic situation of vengeance by family upon family. So that doesn't necessarily sound like a normal plot for an RPG adventure, but it does give some. It doesn't make one really try to find something unique and interesting to create the adventure with. So, for such a plot, we would need a guilty member of a family and an avenging member of a family, a victim of the guilty kinsman. So the classic example of this would be, of course, Hamlet. So to trigger this adventure, what would be good would be to get one of the player characters as one of the parties involved here, rather than just working for an NPC. But if it's too difficult, then of course an NPC could fulfill maybe the avenging kinsman role, and the players can work with that NPC to complete the vengeance upon the kinsman. We can say in this example, perhaps, that we'll find one of the players who's got family members, and we'll kill one of those off using another family member, and that essentially triggers a plot hook, triggers an adventure for that player. But that doesn't really give us, again, much to go on in terms of what happens next. That's only creating a general plot. Now, of course, we could then split up the adventure by then rolling on this table again to determine, like, if you consider that you've got your sort of campaign arc, your adventure arc, and then within the adventure you'll have a series of scenes, and each scene needs to be a conflict of some sort, whether that is a physical conflict, a fight, or whether it is a social conflict where two parties want something out of a social interaction, and they either need to come to an agreement, or one needs to win over the other in terms of getting what they want. Or it can be a conflict against something, let's say, inanimate. So let's say a quiz, or not a quiz, a riddle or a puzzle would be a conflict against a problem. Let's say that the players want to gain access to a room. The room is locked with a door, and the door has a riddle associated with it. The conflict then is against the door, essentially. There's probably a more refined way of stating that, but hopefully you understand the point there. The same would be said of, if there was a fire in the tavern and the players need to escape from the fire, that's a conflict against nature, let's say. So in this situation, we can say that the campaign, or the broader plot, is this vengeance of family against family. We can refine the details later on, who the two parties are in this, and let's say that the first adventure in resolving this conflict, we can roll again here. This time we get 26. So 2 over here and 6 over here gives us obtaining. Now, essentially, obtaining means there's two opposing parties. One has an object, and maybe there is an arbitrator of some form. We can probably go to one of our other generators to work out, to randomly generate what is the item. well, let's say we find a MacGuffin table somewhere. In fact, why don't I do that? I've got one from the handy Game Mastery Guide, first edition Pathfinder. So let's just page over to there. I won't be able to show it on the screen, unfortunately, because I just have it printed out. Do bear with me. Of course, I should have prepared this, and also I've recently rearranged my folder, so I don't know where anything is, but I've now found it. So, D percentage. So the object in question, let's say, is 89. That means it's oh goodness, unexplored territory. I'm going to re-roll that just because I can't swiftly come up with a reasoning for that. Let's say a lost soul. I like that. So the object is the lost soul. If we say perhaps let's start making a note of this. So there is a vengeance against family member. Another family member has been killed. Let's say the Avenger knows who the, or maybe the Avenger wouldn't know, because we don't have to necessarily reveal that the killer was within the family. So the Avenger wants to learn who killed their family member, and they will somehow quest out the soul of that family member in order to ask them questions. So Avenger will seek the soul of the family member to question. Now in this obtaining scenario, there are two or more opposing parties. So that means that somebody owns the soul, and they need to in some way be confronted or bribed or questioned, or in some way made to give access to the soul. So the soul is currently owned by, and what we can do here perhaps is go back to our tables here, where we have this big long table of patrons and targets, where we need a D1000. And we'll just run, I mean, there's obviously a lot of ways that we can generate an NPC, but we'll just do it this way for now, just as this is open. So I've rolled 848, which gives us the result of, where is that? A spy, a noble spy. I don't like it very much, but let's just say it's a noble. So in this setting, the king and the aristocracy somehow have control over the souls of those who are killed, and the player needs to, or the character needs to, confront this noble for the soul. Now we might think that it would be a case of going to that person and confronting them, and leave it up to the player of how they do that. But we could potentially roll on this dramatic situation table again to come up with another situation in order to find out how the player would gain that soul. But what we're going to do instead is take a look at another table which I've got. This one, unfortunately, I do not have a source for. I can't remember exactly where I got it from. somewhere on the internet. If I manage to find where exactly it was, then I'll put that in the description below. But essentially, this is a list of different challenges, and you can have multiple versions of or multiple challenges within your adventure. What I've done is numbered each of the ones 1 to 6, so we'll roll a d6, although rolling a 6 will give us something that the villain is doing. So again, with a lot of these plot generation devices, nothing is going to work out exactly perfectly. You can't just roll a bunch of dice and have a ready-made plot that makes sense and doesn't need any further work. These are just generating ideas that we will then use to elaborate to come up with our own idea. It's supposed to kickstart the thought process. So in order to get this lost soul that the noble has, we're going to roll a d6 to find out what challenge the players are going to need to do. And we've rolled a 5, which gives us a stealth/heist challenge. So I'm going to roll a d20 and disregard any result over 14. And we get a 10. So this is sabotaging a device or a ritual or something without being noticed. We can maybe say that there is a special ritual that is done that transports the soul somewhere, and that the players will need to try and in some way corrupt or sabotage that ritual in order to, let's say, reroute the soul to somewhere else. Okay, they must sabotage the ritual to claim the soul and store it in a some special device, perhaps. So I'm not going to go too much further with this plot, but that's generated a bunch of ideas that are very unlikely to have come to my head just from thinking of an idea. And that's the main benefit of all of these tables, is that they generate ideas that you wouldn't normally come up with. You then refine them, and the actual quest is going to get revealed along the way. So, I mean, this idea is quite interesting as an overall plot, that in order to get vengeance against a family member, the character needs to find the soul of the family member that was killed and speak to that soul to find out who killed them. But the soul is being held by this member of the aristocracy who uses it for some purpose. Again, we can generate what that purpose is, or we can come up with our own idea, and the players will need to sabotage the ritual in order to hijack and claim the soul for themselves. And that's only the first part of the whole quest. Then, with once they have completed that, they'll be able to question the soul, find out that it was another family member who actually killed the person, and then we can go on to generate another adventure, let's say, in order for the players then to confront that family member and resolve the situation. We don't have in this example what the outcome is. Let's say, what do the players want by the end of it? To restore the soul, just to kill the person that did it, or whether they want to bring them to justice. That's something that could be thought up, or probably generated somewhere or other on another table. Now the list of challenges here doesn't have to be used only once per adventure. We don't have to only have this sabotage. We can roll. Well, I've rolled a 6 here, so that gives us villain moves as well. So what I'll do is do a roll of a, let's see, D40. How should we do that? I guess we roll D20 and a D6. So that gives us the result of 32. So at this time, the villain will also push the player's buttons, play on the hero's flaws, temptations, and fears. So that's something worth noting down, and something that you can attempt to add into the adventure while they're trying to sabotage. We don't really know who the villain is here, so it's maybe not that great. You know, something like sending a spy. Maybe there's a spy involved who, if the players don't figure out that the spy is there, then their preparations for capturing the soul are revealed to the noble. But another option that we have is to introduce a complication as well. So I've rolled a 10 here. So two challenges conflict with each other. So you must break your stealth in order to help someone in trouble, or capture a criminal, or save people who are currently in danger. And in fact, that first example is perfect for our situation. So halfway through the stealth operation to steal the soul, something occurs and it puts an ally in danger, and the players must then make a choice of whether to abandon stealth in order to save their companion, or whether to let that companion come to harm. So these things probably shouldn't be generated on the fly as you're going along. They can be, but you might end up with tricky situations that you can't resolve well, and then the adventure would suffer overall. Now, this whole adventure generation method tends to create bigger stories which might not fit well with OSR play. So in this example, if the character who is seeking vengeance dies in the adventure, then you've lost the whole plot. There's not that much motivation for other characters to continue this plot, unless you somehow link all of them to that first murdered family member. So that's the danger when you're dealing with OSR, because of course characters can die much more easily, and it can completely ruin plans here. So this example is very good for coming up with big plots, but yeah, you do run the risk of overdeveloping something that will never see an end because the character in question dies. We're going to have a look at another possible plot generation method, and that is using what is called the big list of RPG plots, which I mentioned on my previous video and can be gotten for free on DriveThruRPG. And it is essentially just a big old list of all the different plot types that I believe that the author went through Dungeon Magazine or something, and tried to find all the different plot types that came up actually within RPGs. So this is specifically written for RPGs rather than the 36 dramatic situations, which is more for general fiction. I believe that it was like an analysis of all the different types of plots that have ever been in a film, book, play, sort of thing. And again, I will try and remember who the author was and put it in the description below. So big list of RPG plots. That's a great resource, especially just reading through it. It's not really a generator. There are no dice rolls associated with it. It's just a list of the different types of plots, but it's of course very useful. Another potential idea for coming up with plots, which I haven't used in play before, but I do find it quite an interesting idea, is the use of magic cards. So this is just an idea I came up with after taking a look at magic cards recently and just seeing the sheer number of cards that are available. And all of the cards can be looked at on the Wizards of the Coast website. You've got the picture, you've got the description, and this is one that I came up with randomly. Wooden Sphere. I think that this method would be very good if you find yourself in a situation where, let's say, the characters are traveling in the wilderness and you want there to be some kind of event that's not necessarily an encounter with enemies, though as we see as we generate other cards here, that may be the case. But you want something interesting to happen. So generate a random item, a random card here. We've got this wooden sphere. So already we've got a nice picture which we can translate into the game, maybe show the players of what they discover. And then the text, you don't need to know how to play Magic in order to implement this into the game. If you know how to play it and what the different colours mean, then it can help with generating ideas. But we can just read this and we can see that any green spell cast gives you 1 life, can only give 1 life each time a green spell is cast. Well, I know what a green spell is. It's something to do with nature. But if you didn't know that, maybe you would interpret this differently. But the characters maybe will discover this wooden sphere somewhere. If they do something nature related, cast a nature spell, maybe they cast a healing spell near it, then it triggers this wooden sphere, which gives an additional effect to the party before it floats off into the sky. We can use that as our basic idea and come up with something more defined if the characters actually stumble upon it. But another great thing here is that the players will try and interact with this object, and as you listen to them discuss between themselves, coming up with theories about what it is, and you hear them say something that sounds really cool, then steal that idea directly from the players and then implement it. I think that's a good rule of thumb for anything that you're putting into the game, especially, let's say, puzzles and riddles. If there is a puzzle that you've introduced and the players are miles off from getting it, but they're coming up with a bunch of theories which you think would fit reasonably, then just simply steal that theory from them and implement that. So if you want to use this idea, then you go to this gatherer.wizards.com and scroll down to where it says random card here, and we click view card, see what comes up. Here we've got Desperate Lunge. So, this is a spell, and as you look at it, you might think, well, I don't know how to implement this into the game at all. I'll just randomly do another one until I find something that's easy to fit in. But it's worth just considering everything that we can see on this card and see if we can add it into our game. Now, if we're looking for something that is a new encounter, maybe this isn't the card to use, but you could, if you're in the middle of well, let's say that the characters are fighting against a group of goblins. They've been going at it for a few rounds, and it's not a very interesting combat, so you want to spice it up a little bit. That's always something that we should be doing, trying to add some time limit or some complication into any event. And so, yeah, let's say they're fighting the goblins, you draw this card, and now what does this mean? Obviously, the picture isn't of much use to us because it's got this big old dragon or demon. I'm not sure what that is. So we'll take a look at the text. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains flying until end of turn. You gain 2 life. So we need to determine who this is going to affect. let's say that combat is so far going in the favor of the players. The goblins are suffering. We want to make the complication to extend this fight a little bit, so we're going to target the goblins with this. This +2/+2 thing, we can translate that to mean they get some bonus to their attacks, and they gain flying. Now, we might not actually want to make the goblins fly, and we can see the description of this card. It's called Desperate Lunge. So the goblins are triggered to make a last desperate lunge at the players for some reason or other. And they're not fleeing, as is customary for goblins. They're making a desperate lunge. So we're gonna give the goblins a bonus to their attackers, and they can move an extra bit or something, or maybe one of the goblins climbs up onto a level above and jumps down onto one of the players, maybe targeting the wizard rather than the fighters at the front, something like that. You use your imagination or the situation as it stands in order to implement this idea. But that's already given us an idea of something to do. Probably the goblins would, in fact, get +2 to their attack. So there you go. And perhaps one of the goblins, the one that's doing the lunging, give them some hit points back because they're filled with energy or something like that. However you translate this into the game, it's up to you. But it gives you an idea of something to do. We could read this text at the bottom. I think it's probably not relevant to the situation I've just described, but maybe that flavor text at the bottom might give us the idea that we want. So we'll stick with this this goblin encounter and just randomize another card. So in this situation, perhaps the players are again winning over against the goblins, and they've killed off half the goblins. And instead of running away, some of the goblins, they return as skeletons. That's a nice simple one. It then brings up a lot more questions about why are these goblins coming back as skeletons? What is the reason behind that? Is there a necromancer within the goblins? Is the area that they're fighting in somehow magically tainted? Who knows? But it's just brought us a random idea. I mean, this specific one is perhaps a little bit dull. We would see random skeletons in the game anyway. We don't really need to generate a magic card to come up with that. But you know, we just keep generating. If you're in the middle of the combat and you want to add this idea in, then you don't want to spend too long trying to get the card that you generate to fit into the situation. But if you've got a bit more time on your hands, then it's worth trying to really work the idea into the story, because it's an added restriction that's going to create or promote more creativity. Here we've generated some vampiric aristocrat. Let's say the characters are walking through the woods. You randomly pick this, and then all of a sudden you've got an interesting encounter for them to deal with. The picture kind of helps. This obviously is not an encounter with a vampire who's immediately going to attack them. This woman is sort of like drifting through the scene, and you see there's a ruin and everything. And I'm sure that there's something that you can do with the flavor text here that will help generate an idea. So that's something that I haven't actually implemented in my games yet, but I'm going to try. And another possible thing, especially when you're dealing with wilderness adventures, is the huge array of different lands that there are within the Magic game. Now, I've got listed out that there's about 870 different lands that you can choose from. I've got a list of them. I won't show it at the moment, but what I might do is when we have the players walking through the wilderness and they stumble across something, it shouldn't just be a ruin or a shrine or an interesting tree. It should be something really compelling that they want to investigate. Everything that they come across within the wilderness should not just be bypassed as something that gets seen and forgotten about not long after, but should be interacted with and should reveal something about the world. Because as we know from a storytelling point of view, things should only happen within a story if, one, they cause conflict, which then develops the plot forward or develops the characters, or anything that gets featured in the story should reveal something about the world or something about the characters or reveal something to the reader. Anything that doesn't fulfill those two criteria is probably a waste of time and incidental and will be forgotten about. Of course, there are exceptions to that, and I'm not going to claim to be a scholar on literature, but I think when it comes to RPGs, we want to either create conflict, we want to reveal something about the characters, the people, or the world around us. They're the two main things that we're looking at. So every time you come across something in the wilderness, we want to try and fill one of those criteria. So I've generated a random number, 477, and on my big old list, 477 gives us something called Nurturing Peatland. So we would just simply search for that item within this, and it will give us this this interesting item here. Now, I think already that's an interesting thing to introduce as the characters are walking through the wilderness. A peatland is a common sight within certain regions of Britain, certainly, and other places within the world. But I've never seen a peatland in the random table in any RPG book. So already that's interesting. And this one, of course, seems to be if we look at the description here, it creates new life in some way. There's something slightly dark and shadowy about the area, and the rules seem to state that it can produce, well, in this case, some mana. You can interpret that how you want it in D&D terms, but it allows one to draw a card, which in the rules of the game could result in all sorts of things. But let's translate it to D&D. This peatland it's not an especially nice place to be. It's maybe very difficult to travel through, and it's going to spawn some kind of it's very life-giving, but it's going to spawn some kind of potential creature, something maybe a little bit shadowy that the players will encounter. So already we've got a nice picture that we can show the players. We know that it's a peatland, so maybe that's going to reduce their movement speed through this area, and we can imagine some kind of maybe insect-like, slightly evil creature that erupts from the peatlands, and the players have to encounter it. So it's not a wildly strange thing for the players to come across, but it's interesting enough that hopefully it will be memorable, and hopefully it triggers ideas within your own mind in how to add an interesting encounter. Now, there are a vast array of different ways of generating ideas, all sorts of tables and everything, but what you're really looking for, I suppose, is the quickest way to kickstart the imagination to introduce something into the game. I think there's a lot of times where you'll spend a very long time rolling on tables that you then can't implement that thing mid-game. And I think, unfortunately, the Tome of Adventure Design is a little guilty of that. A lot of the stuff in there you can't generate on the fly. You need to come up with that stuff before the adventure starts. It's a great resource, but it's not designed for using quickly in game. The dramatic situations and the challenge generator that I had there, I think that they again should be used beforehand. Certainly the 36 dramatic situations, but I have used them in the middle of adventures, just to kickstart an idea to then elaborate on. Using these magic cards, I think, is more likely to be useful in the middle of a game. And obviously, the things might not always fit. So each of the different sets of magic takes place in a different plane of the multiverse. So they're very thematic. Sometimes you might generate something that really doesn't fit, and sometimes you want a very specific feel. So there is, for example, an ancient Greece themed set within Magic. So you might want to grab ideas from that set if you're running an ancient Greek campaign, something like that. So there's a bunch of different ideas of things to use, and I'm always coming across other tables that seem great, that can inject ideas. Obviously, you want tables that are big enough that if you use them often enough, you're not coming up with something that's recognizably the same as you've used before. But there's some of my ideas of plot generation, and I'm going to try and use some of those in my Delving Deeper solo campaign. If you've got any comments about that, any ideas of your own, any recommendations, then please let me know, and speak to you next time.